Fallon in Canada says that I give atheists a bad name and wants to talk about that. So welcome, Fallon. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Excellent.
Well, I guess that's up to you, really.
Fallon, I'm going to be your unbiased, or well, biased judge, I guess. Biased judge. You claim that Matt gives atheists a bad name, and I'd like to hear a little bit about that. But before you jump into it, are you or are you not an atheist?
I would say I am leaning more towards atheism. I used to be a Christian. Lots of questions, not a lot of answers, some answers.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that answer. If you don't mind me digging a little deeper, what type of Christian? Because there's a lot of different positions.
I would say born again.
Okay. And does that mean you do you speak in tongues? Did you speak in tongues?
Believing.
Pardon?
No.
Okay.
No, never spoke in tongues. No.
All right. Well, let's get into the bad name thing here. I would like to hear your thoughts.
Sure. So first I'll start off by saying I'm probably not going to tell you to fuck off, Matt. I do want to give you some critical feedback.
You can, and I don't mind.
Fine.
I did it. It was fun.
Okay. Well, and you can tell me to fuck right off too. That's cool.
Go ahead.
Again, as a new atheist, sort of former Christian who's questioning a lot of things.
Yeah.
I've been sort of looking for some guidance, answers. You know, taking apart a belief system at the age that I'm at is kind of a big undertaking. And so I've been watching a lot of thought leaders and philosophers like Hitchens and Dawkins and Seth Andrews and yourself. I do like watching your show quite a bit because you're dealing with believers a lot who are calling in with lots of questions and ideas that maybe need to be looked at a little bit more closely. But I feel like sometimes you just get so angry and triggered and frustrated that you hang up, you don't answer the questions.
Wait.
I'm questioning.
Fallon?
Myself.
Fallon?
Yeah.
I'm fine with the notion that you might think that I get angry. I'm not keen on triggered, but when you accuse me of not answering the question, I want some evidence. What question don't I answer? Because that's what I get frustrated with the callers, because I ask questions and they don't answer them. And so if you're saying that I'm not answering questions, I definitely want to address that. When has that ever happened?
And Fallon, if you don't have an answer right now, this is something you can collect and call back another time.
Sure.
Oh no, I've definitely got an answer, and it's usually along the lines of Matt. You'll either make a statement or ask a question, and the caller is just so married to their reason for calling in that they just keep going back to it. And I can understand that would be super, super frustrating. You're trying to take apart where their beliefs are coming from, asking questions to lead them to that, and there's almost a fear on the caller's side where they don't want to answer the question because then I think that the answer will lead them to a place they want to go. Yeah.
Yeah. So I asked a question just now, which was for you to provide an example of when I wasn't answering questions, which is what you accused me of. And instead of doing that, you talked about when I asked questions and how callers react. That is not answering my question. What questions am I not answering?
You do answer a lot of questions. Like when someone is looking for evidence.
Fallon.
About evolution.
And Fallon, what I'll do is I tried to give you that off-ramp a minute ago. If you don't have a specific example to back up the claim, because you made the claim and then Matt said, give an example. If you don't have an example at this time, that's cool. Just say, I don't have a specific example to give you at this time, Matt. And it'd be fine. If you do have a specific example, now you can actually give it to Matt.
Yeah,
so
because you said
one of the two. Do you have an example or not have an example?
I don't have a specific caller or a specific call.
Okay. That's cool. So no harm there.
Cool.
You've answered Matt's question. He says, "Do you have?"
That's all I wanted was an answer to my question.
Yep.
So let's get back to how I'm giving atheism or atheists a bad
So now you've said no. You can collect one and call back. So that topic is now set aside. And now we go to the original comment is, how is Matt giving atheism a bad name? I guess that's what your position was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the reason that I say that is from my own personal experience of atheists before I started questioning my own faith. I found them to be arrogant, smug.
Sure.
You know,
If I may, Fallon, I'm so sorry. I hate interrupting.
Yeah.
I asked your reference to Matt, and now there's another example. You didn't answer that question. You went into your experience with other atheists. So if I can, what about Matt? What has he done that gives atheists a bad name?
Well, acting that way towards.
Okay, what way is he acting?
People that aren't.
I'm confused though,
Smug,
because
arrogant.
you said that you had that opinion of atheists before me. So how am I responsible for that? Seems to me that you're walking in
You're
with
not.
baggage. It seems to me that you just admitted walking in with baggage and then judging me based on that baggage.
A little bit. I guess what I'm saying is it sort of confirms what my experience of atheists has been a little bit.
I have another thought, if I can be so rude. Forgive me. There are a lot of atheists that are quiet. There's a lot of atheists that are silent. They don't use their atheism or lack of belief in God pretty much any way in their life, in their work life, and they're quiet. And what some of us have found out is that being really quiet like that hasn't fucking worked. And so if that type of person was a host on a show, it'd probably be so painfully boring that no one would watch it. So that maybe that's an effect. And I know that in my personal life, I've talked to a lot of people, and a lot of the times it is a very casual, polite, and gentle conversation. However, I have had occasions where I'm the asshole, and I'm clearly the asshole, and I know that I'm the asshole in the moment, and I still may not be able to stop myself, because sometimes I've explained things so many times in my life that it becomes difficult to be calm and polite and rational. And maybe that's a weakness on my part. But I've also had the experience where sometimes people come back to me a year or 2 or 5 years later and said, Phil, years ago we talked and you were kind of a dick, but I couldn't argue against you. I just got mad that you're a dick. And so I started doing research. And then when they did that research, they realized that maybe what they thought was keeping them religious was wrong. And so they changed their position because of the prompting of me being kind of a jerk about it. Doesn't always work that way, but very few people get deconverted during a conversation. And sometimes some people, they're better off when challenged, and then they go forward with that. So maybe Matt seems a little more rough than you'd like, and I think there's merit for that position, but is he effective? Because I know one of my goals as an evangelical atheist is to try to help as many people out of religion. And often that's a nice conversation. But sometimes it requires kind of a verbal slap in the face where someone gets confronted and has to get challenged and go try to find the evidence and come back. I know I just ranted a lot. So go ahead, Fallon, tell us something.
I think you hit on a key point for me is the notion of effectiveness, right? And so I've watched, I don't know, I'm almost embarrassed to think about how many hours of this show I've watched. I'm just so thirsty for information. And a lot of times I walk away thinking I got so much out of that. Matt and or guest has explained things so well that I really just get it. And then other times it's like, the caller, and I can't give you a specific example, but where they're, really pressing on something, and then it just leads to this frustration and hang-up situation where I'm like, I wanted the answer to that because I question that myself.
It's funny because sometimes
I don't get
it. When I listen to the show as the podcast, I'm often annoyed by how long Matt does talk to people and some other hosts, because my views might even be...
That's true too.
Yeah, my views might even be shorter. And it's one of those things that if you are on enough video or if you have a blog or podcast like I have, the Phil Ferguson Show, by the way, someone can always find something that I did wrong or that I didn't react the right way. It's not scripted. We don't know who's calling and what they're going to say. So sometimes it can be a bit of a challenge, but I get your point. And I think Matt would be the first to say sometimes he reacts a little too harshly, but it's a tough gig. And some of the people that call just don't pay attention and don't listen. And that can be very frustrating.
Oh, I know.
I'll be evidently the second person.
There are times where Matt gets, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was saying I'll probably be the second person to say it since Phil just said it. I want to make sure that we don't forget, because I'm not going to end the call right now, because I have a couple of questions that may be clarifying. But also, I want to make sure we promote the email address, which is tv@atheist-community.org. They can get it up at the bottom of the screen. You can email in, as can anybody else, with any specific complaints or otherwise. I kind of want to... So you're not remotely the first person to suggest that I'm arrogant or smug, or that I've given atheists a bad name, or that I've been rude to callers, or anything else. It's happened many times over the years. But it's never happened from people. Well, all right, let me correct this a little bit. I've hosted this show for 16 years. I've dealt with the same arguments over and over and over again. And I think that I have the capacity to maintain my patience probably better now than I did maybe 5 or 6 years ago or 7 years ago. But I don't see, first of all, that there's necessarily a problem with... Sometimes people are going to perceive that you're being arrogant and smug, whether you are or not. And I wonder if those negative interactions that you're seeing, where you're like, oh, Matt's just being arrogant or smug, or he hung up on the caller too quick. Of course I've hung up on people too quickly. Has it ever happened when there was an actual honest interlocutor on the phone who was answering questions and having a discussion?
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah. And so one thing to keep...
people are so married to their beliefs, they're afraid to confront the questions you're asking, because it would lead them to an answer they can't accept.
One thing to try and remember... One thing to try and remember is that right now I have 6 people on hold. That can be as many as 9, I think. And I have, what do we got? There's 4,500 people watching live right now. That can be as much as 6,000 depending on the week. And then there are multiple people who are going to be watching this. And so I have to do a rather complicated dance, which is figuring out, how long do I let the caller go on? How long, are we likely to get anything good out of this? Are we running in circles too much? Can I still get some kind of point out of this? Is the caller reachable? Is somebody at home who thinks like the caller, are they still potentially reachable? When am I wasting time? And when are the people who've been on hold for 45, 44, 42, 51, and 53 minutes, when are they going to give up? And when they get on, if they waited for 50 minutes and they get 2 minutes at the end of the show, how are they going to feel? It's not an easy thing, and I'm not always going to get it right. But I honestly, sincerely, and repeatedly strive to give as good as I get. And so when people are actually interested in having an honest discussion, they get longer calls and they get a calmer me. And when they stick to a script or don't answer questions, fuck them. They don't deserve any more of my time or the audience's time. But I will continue to make use of them as long as there is a good point and some teaching thing to come out of this. But I'm going to get it wrong on occasion, which I will acknowledge every day, and twice on Sunday, like I did today.
Cool. I appreciate that, because again, I know some of the dimwits that get on, they're insufferable. I don't know how you get through some of those calls, but sometimes the issues they're bringing forward, like you said, other people watching might benefit from you chewing on the issue a little bit longer. And there have been some specific times where I felt that way, and that's why I wanted to, and I'm a little bit nervous about sort of being lumped into that super logical, as I'm kind of getting away of the superstitious crap in my life, and I'm focusing more on, logical arguments and things like that, that I'm going to be viewed as, arrogant, or I, think I'm smarter than everybody. And
Fallon.
I find a way to kind of
No,
Fallon, I have terrible news for you. Yes.
Uh-oh.
No matter how nice you are,
yeah.
the fact that you don't believe in a God, that you could dismiss somebody else's God, means you are arrogant and dismissive, because they have Psalm 14:1 to go to. The fool has said in his heart that there is no God. They they can do no good thing. People are going to.
And to that I say, fuck them all, because honestly,
I don't know. You're sounding a little arrogant and smug now, Fallon.
I know, and I've been accused of that in my past. That's probably why I recognize it in you. I have been accused of that.
I can tell you,
probably much like you don't tend to be, but
I gotta move on to some other callers. But I'll tell you this.
Thank you for calling.
Yeah. First of all, thanks, and thanks for the feedback, and I appreciate it. People who know me, people who are really close to me, can tell you that I spend probably too much time replaying the shows in my head and figuring out how I could have done it better. Where did I lose patience? Why did I do this? My way is not the only way. It's not even necessarily the best way, but it has in fact been effective, and I'm constantly striving to do my best. There are people who despise me for things I've done, and a lot of people who despise me for things I've never done and would never do, all because they're buying into rumors and bullshit. I, long time ago, learned that I need to be comfortable with me, and that if I surround myself with people who are willing to be honest with me and tell me, hey, you got a problem here, that's the best thing. And so I appreciate your feedback, Fallon. And hopefully, we both learned a little something about how this goes.
I really admire that. And I'll definitely call in with my more kind of like religious questions as they come up.
Absolutely.
Debate that.
Somebody's screaming in the background. They need your help.
Thank you, Fallon.
Oh yeah. I'm running.
Yeah,
Fallon.
It's funny, Matt, where we were talking about sometimes it doesn't matter what you do. A couple years ago, I had a high school friend. So that's 30 plus years for me that I got out of high school. And this gentleman, we're in the same class. We're friends. We were friends in high school. We were friends outside of high school. He's not been very technological kind of person, never got on Facebook. He finally got on Facebook, sent me a friend request, and now we're not friends in the real world anymore. Because when we would talk about his kids, my kids, what's going on, the weather, sports ball, maybe. There's all kinds of things we could talk about. But once he had access to my wall and saw some of my positions and the stuff that I post about politics and religion, he just came unfucking hinged, and just all of a sudden it was like talking to someone in a mob. He was acting as if he's a mob, because sometimes the nicest people feel that they are invisible on social media and they can say whatever they want and there's no repercussions, and just became the most vile person. When I sent him a private message and I said, just sit down and read what you're sending me. Have someone else read what you're sending me. And that was it. We're not friends anymore on social media or in the real world. And it's just heartbreaking that 30 years of friendship can just disappear like that because they don't like what I had to say.
Yeah. I had people who, my brother actually put together a Facebook group when Facebook was still kind of new and early, of inviting all the kids who were part of our church youth group from when we were teenagers to join. Yeah. So we'd have a place to gather. And he made the mistake of adding me to the group.
Right.
And even without me saying a word, of course, people added and they wanted to reconnect, and they hop over to my Facebook page and they discover that now I'm an atheist talking about this. That group died instantly because there are some people in that group, and I love them for it, who are still my friends, and and, we don't talk much, but we could interact. We could have, this religious subject isn't the entirety of my existence and shouldn't be the entirety of anybody's. If you get no other lesson from the atheist experience, is, maybe take your religion with a fucking grain of salt, and maybe we wouldn't have to spend so much time dealing with it. Stop trying to legislate your religious views on everybody. If it was like a hobby, I could be like, well, okay, you do whatever, but it's not. It's impacting all of us.